One, the Football Hall of Fame is a non-profit organization. The Hall doesn't buy artifacts as a rule. Just about everything you see here has been donated or it's on loan. And secondly, this is a working museum, typical of a museum. Maybe only 5% of what we have is on display at any one time. Everything else is either below ground level in the archives, so we have three-dimensional objects, and our two-dimensional objects over there in the new Ralph Wilson Research Center. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We're just going to give you a little history today on head protection. Probably the very first attempt at protecting the head was hair. Players would just grow their hair long to absorb some of the blow. Of course, that led to pulling of the hair. In 1895, every player on the Yale football team shaved his head, so he wouldn't be able to get his hair pulled. In the mid-1890s, Spalding came out with something. It was a woven silk cap. It looked something like this, intended to keep, your hair from being pulled. Now, for the record, leather helmets have been around since 1899. That's when Spalding first started selling them. Now, this is the first recognized facial protection. It goes back to 1892. It was patented by Arthur Cumnock and John Morrell. It's made of hard rubber. They sold it for $2.50, and they advertised it as the ultimate face protection. You can see by the strap that went around the player's head. You may not have realized he had to hold place with his teeth. Keep it from flopping up and down his face as he ran. So you can imagine trying to run and breathe and hold this in your mouth. There are stories where a player would just take the thing off and going down the field and use it as a weapon. Okay? So we're sure it caused more injuries than it prevented. Then in 1896, a man named George Barkley, a coach at Lafayette College, he went to a harness maker, and they had him make something, and he called it a head harness. It was designed primarily to protect the ears, had a couple other strips of leather to hold it in place. Now, early on, these things were called head harnesses, not helmets. And anyway, over the next couple of decades, he kept adding pieces to this thing until by the 1920s, it looked like this. Now, a player like Red Grange would have worn this helmet. It's made of very soft leather. The insides are cotton or felt, quite warm to wear, which is probably why they punched all the holes in them. Attempts at face masks on this style of helmet failed because the leather was so soft and the screws would loosen and would just pull away. So even for the NFL didn't require helmets until 1943. College required a helmet as of 1939. But even the players who were wearing this style of helmet back then were still having serious head injuries, so there's definitely a need for better head protection. I'm going to pass this one around. The term leatherheads probably came from something like this. Some of the visitors like to put this on and get their picture taken, but you're welcome. This helmet appeared in the 1930s. It was right up through the 1950s. It's called a fiber shell. The bottom is a very rigid, stiff leather, and the top part up here is like a pegboard. Actually has wood fiber there, like you hang your tools on the garage. But inside, see that type of suspension? That's called a subkey suspension. Now, a suspension is intended to keep the top of your head off the inside of the helmet. Subkey suspension was created by a Hall of Fame coach from Illinois named Bob Zupke. He was incidentally Red Grange's and George Halas's coach when they were in Illinois. But this was the style of helmet that the first team logo appeared. It happened in 1948. That year, running back for the Rams, by the name of Fred Gierke, hand-painted 75 of his teammates' helmets blue, and then he painted the horn on it. Okay? They paid him $1 a helmet. I don't know whether they paid him touch him up after every game. The following year, they were baked in, and now they're decals. The second team with a logo, Baltimore Colts. There are two teams that are still unique. The Browns don't have any at all, and the Steelers just have one on the right side. They put that on in 1962. Some people say they just did it to see if the fans would like it. And they have liked it on one side. They had a good season, so they want to change their luck. Ironically, they have the public steel out of Cleveland to thank for that emblem. The public steel suggested that they use the U.S. steel emblem. So we just mentioned the Rams. I'm going to start this helmet around. You're welcome to try this one on too. This is a replica of a helmet the Rams wore in the 1949 season. It's unique because of the horn. 49 was the only year they had notches. So if you ever see an old photo and it has notches, you'll know that's the 49 season. They've changed their color combinations over the years. Believe it or not, we've got one down there, a blue helmet with red horns. I can't tell you what year it's from, but we've got one down the archives. We've got a back row, too, so we might want to catch that.
Okay.
One of the most significant advancements occurred in 1939. We'll grab one of these chairs out here if you like. That was the year Adele introduced the very first plastic helmet. They introduced it at the College All-Star game played in Chicago. That was a game that was played from 1933 through 1976. The College All-Star team would actually play the NFL champion from the prior year. But anyway, Riddell gave the new plastic helmets to all the college players. When World War II was breaking out, there was a shortage of material. Plastic was being rationed for military use, so they stopped making plastic helmets. When they came back out, they were brittle. 1 year, a player from the Rams cracked 9 helmets himself. So for a short time in 1948, the NFL banned use of plastic helmets. But George Halas interceded on Riddell's behalf. When they came back out, by 1954, they worked out all those cracking problems. All right, so the plastic helmet was now solid, and it would support a face mask. Early on, a player would wear a face mask to protect an existing injury. They didn't really wear them to prevent injuries. The style of face mask you see on this helmet is made out of lucite. This is what they wore back in late 1940s, early 1950s. There were issues with lucite. Players didn't like it because when they spit, it would come back at them. It would distort their image of the field when they looked through it. And a lot of players said it would make their opponents look bigger. But the serious problem, this thing would shatter, so they stopped using lucite. One of the first face mask makers was a guy named Shaw. Back in the late 30s, excuse me, he was making them out of wire and metal. And of course, he went on to become a pretty famous helmet maker. Paul Brown was also instrumental in the evolution of the face mask. In 1955, he had held a patent with Riddell. Was on the BT5, the bar tubular, that first single bar one. Okay. The last player in the NFL to go without a face mask was Tommy McDonald. The last quarterback to play without a face mask was Bobby Lane. Anybody remember Bobby Lane? Oh, good. Okay. Well, you're going to appreciate the story. He was a free spirit, wasn't he? Art Donovan, a Hall of Fame defensive tackle for the Colts, told a story about the time he tackled Bobby Lane. He was laying on top of him in a pile, and you could smell alcohol on his breath. And he said, "Bobby, you're making all this drunk with your breath. Were you out drinking last night?" And Bobby told him no, that he'd been drinking at halftime. Bobby didn't wear a face mask, he didn't wear hip pads, he didn't wear thigh pads, and he didn't wear knee pads.
He drank at halftime.
In 1940, they went to a chin strap. Prior to that, it was more like an Adam's apple strap, which while our players, they never buckled it up because when they got their helmet ripped off, it would about choke them. At that time, they went away from that lucky suspension to this thing, adjustable canvas and leather. And I've been told this was used by our military right up to around the 2000s. So you're probably wondering what this helmet is. This is a replica of a helmet quarterback White should have worn in the 54 season while he was playing with the 49ers. Now, he suffered a broken jaw playing the Steelers at the end of the prior year. So they put on this lucite face mask and this bracket to protect that jaw. But White said both of these things were problems. Defenders just using both of them as handles to tackle. It was not illegal to grab the face mask back then. A little bit of trivia. I hope you remember. Whenever you're writing, you put that dot above the letter I. You know what that's called? That's called a tittle. So whenever you're writing, you put that dot, you'll think of quarterback Y tittle. This helmet came along in about 1971. They did away with the adjustable canvas and leather suspension. Now they got these cells in here. There's 32 of them. They're aero cells and micro cells. They have a number of different names. Some of them are inflatable, either by air or liquid. You can see little inflation points here. In the colder climates like Minnesota, instead of using water, they'd use antifreeze. So these things could get quite heavy. And as a matter of fact, some of the players, when this helmet came out, still preferred this type of suspension. So they clipped the edge, put this suspension into this type of helmet. They get a little bigger, a little heavier. Cowboy fans here today? I know.
Yeah.
This helmet came along in about 2000, 2001. It's called the Revolution. The Dell discovered that 70% of injuries caused by blows to the front side, so they extended protection of the jaw area. They went to double chin strap. We still have these cells in here. These typically, though, most of them aren't inflatable anymore. Some of the Dell helmets, when you put them on, they've got a valve up here where you pump it up to get the proper fitting for the first time until it's 1 inch above your eyebrow. But you can still buy optional face frame padding if you want to. Okay, this little thing on top, that's called a mohawk. It's there to disperse the blows. One of the most famous Mohawks, going back to the Chiefs, his name was Willie Lanier. Willie suffered a rookie head injury, missed 4 games. He couldn't execute this big leather Mohawk on his plastic helmet, and he didn't have a head injury for 9 years. I told you that story because when you get over to Super Bowl Gal, you can see Willie's helmet over there. And I know the story behind it. So, it'll get a little heavier, so I'm going to pass this around, and we'll try that one on too. This is heavier. Let's examine the shut helmet. Up to the end of last year, Riddell was a licensed helmet maker for the NFL. The NFL licensed everything a player wears. Shoes, shots, anything. The player can wear another brand, but show that brand name. And last year when they started seeing the Frank Wilson helmets, whatever, it would always be taped over, covered over with the team logo. Next year, you should be able to see that his brand name. Even though they've always been wearing it. But this example of a shut is called an ion 4D thermoplastic urethane. This was a throwback helmet worn in 2010 game by the Colts. Throwback helmets because of the position of the horseshoes. That's the way they had them at 55. They didn't move them to size till 57. And one of the features of this particular helmet is the face mask. It's actually integrated in there. So it's like a little shock absorber. When you get hit, it goes in and out. This is supposedly pre-fitted. You can check the different opposite sizes. I know it's hard to see from back there, but what do you think this is?
It's a radio.
Yes, very good. Yeah. This is the very first helmet receiver. Very first one. It goes back to 1956. That year, 2 Cleveland area inventors, George Charles and John Campbell, approached Paul Brown, the Cleveland Browns, with the idea of putting a radio on his quarterback's helmet. Paul Brown liked this idea, probably because Otto Graham just retired. And the quarterback in 56 was a guy down the George Radman. So he asked the 2 inventors to keep it a secret. Now, during the testing, this George put the helmet on and walked away from John's home. John lost communication, couldn't call him back. So he went out walking the street until he found him. Found him sitting in the back of a police cruiser. So what happens, they were on the same frequency as the police department. So they changed their frequency, the policemen kept their secret. First time the radio was ever used was a couple miles north of Sirius Stadium called the Akron Rubber Bowl. The Browns would play an exhibition game against the Detroit Lions. Now, by the end of the first half, Lions coaching staff realized Paul Brown wasn't sending in plays with his guards. So at halftime, they sent out a coach to look around the bench, and that's when they found the transmitter. In the second half, they instructed the defensive player to rip off Radman's helmet and try and destroy what was in there. So George Radman had a tough second half. Final time the radio was used was against the New York Giants. The Giants had heard about the Browns radio, so they came to town with their own receiver and an ex-Browns player on the team. So they were intercepting all Brown signals to Radman, translating it to the ex-Brown, and the defensive coordinator would then send in the correct defense. Defensive coordinator for the Giants was Tom Landry. Oh. Their offensive coordinator was Vince Lombardi. And they did win the championship that year with an excellent coaching staff. Hardly anybody remembers the head coach, the assistant. Jimmy Howell was the head coach. Okay. Anyway, by the end of the half, Paul Brown realized what was going on. He didn't use the radio in the second half. At the end of that week, the commissioner, the NFL, Burt Bell, banned the use of the radio. It wasn't legalized again until 1994. Same year they went to 2.30. The ban probably didn't upset Paul Brown too much because he lost every game that he used his radio. Now, this is an example of a radio. I will pass it around, but those of you who want to take a look at it, come on up afterwards. There's speakers in here, battery packs, decoders, and this particular helmet is called a Speed. It's one of Riddell's models, and they call it Speed because how fast you can get the face mask off. If a player's injured on the sideline, they don't have to unscrew it. They just push a little tool, and like a Allen wrench, pulls right back. Also has some better protection brainstem area. Now, this particular helmet is a radio helmet worn by Paul Posluszny, defensive captain for the Jaguars last September. And One player on offense is allowed to have a receiver. As of 2008, one player on defense. If you're watching on television, that's the player that has a green dot right here. The NFL controls the radio frequency. They come to town each week, set a new frequency for each team. They use some military combination of encrypted codes. There's millions of them. Now, as soon as the play clock's turned on, the radio's turned on. With 15 seconds left on the play clock, the radio's shut off. And if you're thinking about getting yourself a radio helmet, I guess that system runs around $2,500. And they keep in a box on the sideline, like this. And if a player plays two positions, like Cordell Stewart from the Speeders, he's the quarterback and everything else, you can only wear your helmet. You have to have 2 helmets. You couldn't wear the radio helmet anymore. A couple quick things about concussions. Modell has a system out there, part of their sideline response system. The acronym is HITS, but anyway, you can buy 6 encoders that go into any of their helmets. And these encoders monitor the direction, severity, and number of hits to the head. Information can be downloaded after the game, create a report, see if the player suffered injury. Information will be also sent in real time to the user on the sideline. Now, the last price I got on that was like $1,500 including the software. You know, there's more and more emphasis on prevention and recognition of concussions. They do have something called a, they're standardized questions that are used all the way from Pee Wee football up to see if the player suffered a concussion, called GATS or something, sideline concussion assessment tool.
Usually it's like, how many fingers I got?
Well, that's the old way. Give him a couple fingers and give him some smelling salts. Well, we have a brand new helmet that will probably be in our next week. We'll start showing it. I know very little about it, but Dell has it. I guess it's really has an area up here that goes in and out in case you're hit, like a bumper. So it's kind of a neat helmet. I'm anxious to learn about it. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. We've got another presentation here at 11:30. We've got a chunk full of unusual artifacts we're going to show you. Have a few around for you to look at. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Super Bowl ring.
Super Bowl ring. That doesn't look like all.
No.
Just look at the size of their fingers, though. Yeah, they're down in.
On the side there? Yeah, and it's an optical illusion. Yeah, it's like. Makes me pretty soft.
I think you can put about 3 fingers in there.
Yeah.
You know?
No, you gotta get ready. Yeah, about 33 degrees. Oh, this is Trish.
Oh.
That's for me. Have a good one. You're welcome.
Oh, gee, it's on the Brewers side. We're not on the Phillies side.
Yeah. You had a bar down there, too. Right underneath there.
Huh?
You had a bar right down there.
Yeah, I saw that. Right.
I can't see. Really just there.
Watching from